I call the members to order, and the first item on our agenda this afternoon is questions to the First Minister, and the first question from Darren Miller.
To outline what consideration the Welsh Government has given to improving infrastructure in North Wales.
Well, our recently published National Transport Finance Plan sets out an ambitious programme of road, rail, bus and active travel improvements as part of a balanced and sustainable plan for transport investment across Wales.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. One thing which many people in North Wales crow about is the disparity between the investment in South Wales in the transport infrastructure and that in the north. You're spending 1.4 billion on an M4 relief road, 400 million more than you were anticipating not that long ago. You announced 180 million for the Metro Central project in Cardiff, and that's within, of course, a £2 billion package for the South Wales Metro system. Now, I don't decry those investments, but when is North Wales going to get its fair share? We've got cripplingly bad infrastructure on the A55, which regularly is congested. We've got problems with our flood defences, and broadband access, particularly in rural communities, is completely unacceptable.
Well, the A55 is, of course, a key strategic route in the north. Last year, we completed a £42 million programme to bring the tunnels at Conwy, Penmaen Bach and Penaclip up to current standards. We're also investing approximately £40 million to upgrade junctions 15 and 16, and another £200 million in the Deeside corridor. In addition, the Abergwyn-Gregin to Tair Meibion advanced drainage scheme was completed over the summer, and we published the draft orders and an environmental statement on the main A55 Abergwyn-Gregin to Tair Meibion improvement scheme. Now, other works in the north include the acceleration of the completion date for a third Menai crossing, which could now open in 2022, and progression of the proposed Carnarvon and Bontnewydd bypass, which represents further investment of over £125 million to the network, and that's just to the roads.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at a map of the electric car charging points across Britain, and we see across North Wales how poor the provision is in terms of swift charging. Now, I look forward to the revolution in the use of electric vehicles, but that isn't going to be able to happen unless the government truly shows ambitious and puts a strategy in place in order to ensure that we are preparing the infrastructure for that revolution. So where there are the signs from the government you're taking this seriously?
Well, of course we take it seriously, and we have to ensure that the structure is in place. And one of the problems is there's such diversity as regards the way in which cars can be charged. There are at least 3 sockets that I can think of, and I drive a hybrid myself. What we need, of course, is for the manufacturers to consider how they could have one uniform charger. Then it would be easier for the government to ensure that we can facilitate having more charging points. And, of course, it's true to say, of course, that with the network that we would want to ensure that we have a pan-Wales network.
Question 2, Neil Hamilton.
Will the First Minister make a statement on mobile phone coverage in Mid and West Wales?
Yes, we recognise the ever-growing importance of mobile communications in rural areas, and our Mobile Action Plan sets out how we plan to work with the industry and regulator to improve mobile connectivity across the country.
Well, I thank the First Minister for that reply, and I know the government is giving a high priority to improving connectivity in the countryside, but I'm sure he'll agree with me that a lot more is yet to be done. There is a significant potential problem with lack of mobile phone coverage in regard to public transport. A constituent has written to me from Llawn in Weinidogion, which has only 4 buses on a Sunday to Aberairon, to say that he was waiting for the 11:27 bus recently, which didn't arrive. And on the website, you're encouraged, of course, to check the website for timetable changes and delays. But he couldn't.
Much as I'm interested in bus times in Llawn, this question is about mobile phone signal.
Yes, correct. But people with mobile phones are encouraged to check the website for delays to the service, which couldn't be done in this particular instance because there was no mobile coverage at the bus stop at which he was waiting for the bus.
Well, I mean, no one's going to pretend that mobile coverage is exactly universal. In many parts of Wales, I live in the middle of a town. I can't get mobile coverage in my house. So we know that there is a challenge for the industry. This is not devolved, of course, but it's a challenge for the industry to make sure that it does extend coverage, as in other countries. Now, what are we doing as a government? Well, the Mobile Action Plan is well underway, with good progress being made. We are currently working to define eligibility for business rate support for new mast sites. And I know that the Cabinet Secretary has appointed Innovation Point to advise, stimulate and coordinate activity on 5G in Wales, including opportunities to secure funding from the UK Government Testbed and Trials Challenge Fund.
Angela Birds.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good afternoon, First Minister. You'll know that an Ofcom report found that 12% of the Welsh landmass is unable to get any mobile phone coverage. And given, for example, in the last 6 months, the appalling storm damages we've had and emergency situations, I wondered if your government has spoken to or would consider talking to some of the innovators, companies such as EE, about using drone technology or the Helikite system, which works off a helium balloon, which will provide people with temporary mobile phone coverage during times of emergency. And of course, it would help to coordinate not only emergency services, but let people know that they're in dire straits or that they need help.
It's a really interesting idea. I'm informed that the Cabinet Secretary has met with with industry representatives in order to discuss this. And it's hugely important that where we have emergencies, that there is sufficient communications, there is a sufficiently robust communications network in place in order to deal with those emergencies. And as I say, a meeting has recently taken place to discuss that very point.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd.
Thank you, Llywydd. Although you mentioned the importance of the availability of mobile phones, now the 4G's only just got to Mynydd on the Llyn Peninsula, and there are some areas that are gravely behind in rural Wales. And one thing that's often forgotten is how important the mobile phone will be for automisation on farms and robotics. And it's coming to a point now that you can control farm machinery and certain issues on the farm through a telephone system and using the phone signal, not the phone itself, but the signal. Will you ensure, therefore, that that's available as we leave the European Union, that best technology is available in all parts of Wales, particularly for our farmers?
Yes, we have to ensure that. What I've noticed in other countries, I was in Uganda 3 years ago, and the network there was much better than the United Kingdom's. I was in very rural areas where it was very difficult to access by road, but when you got there, there were 5 bars of 4G available. And why? Well, there hadn't been any investment at all in landlines, and so they only had mobiles, and that's where the investment had gone. But we must ensure that we don't pretend that there is a network of lines there already that have been there for many years, and use that as an excuse not to progress with a stronger mobile phone network. We want to see a situation where there are many more places in Wales that can get a signal. And of course, at the moment, it is true that it's difficult in rural areas, and there are some urban areas as well. And for example, in the Pontcanna area, people complain to me there is no phone signal there at all, mobile phone signal right in the centre of Cardiff.
Questions now from the party leaders. Plaid Cymru leader, Leanne Wood.
Leaked documents suggest that the Hywel Dda Health Board is considering the future of hospitals in its area. And it's only been around 3 years since the last reconfiguration, which was meant to offer a long-term and sustainable solution. Yet people now face more proposals, including closures. Was the Health Board being honest about its last reconfiguration?
Well, the Health Board itself could answer that. I see no reason why they were not being honest. There are always challenges. The parliamentary review, which all parties have signed up to, has said that there will be difficult decisions in the future. Now, as a government, we have no view on this. This is not our policy. These are options that the Health Board has taken forward. What's hugely important is that whatever the Health Board considers is taken forward with full public consultation.
Well, First Minister, you have to ultimately be responsible and accountable for health. Health is fully devolved and responsible to you. Now, the Health Board are indicating that they want people treated closer to their homes and in the community. But that's not what the proposals in the leaked document appear to be about. One aspect which could complement existing hospital services is the creation of community hubs with beds, or perhaps more accurately, I can't believe it's not a community hospital. Shutting down community hospitals was once a Labour government's policy, and it's led to a reduction in beds, and it's been a big mistake. Community services should not be used as an excuse to close district general hospitals. With bed occupancy across the NHS over the safe level of 85% for the last 7 years, do you accept that the NHS needs more beds and in order to enable it to cope with the additional winter pressures?
I think we need to focus not just on beds, but on the issue of getting people to the hospital as quickly as possible. And that means that if we look at delayed transfers of care, our figures are greatly improved, month on month, and greatly improved from last year. We don't want people staying in hospital for longer than they have to. But of course, the other point that we have to understand is we need an NHS that's sustainable. All parties signed up to that as part of the parliamentary review. It's massively important that, yes, of course, we agree with the principle that people should be treated as close to home as possible, but we also need to make sure that services are sustainable in the future. Now, the proposals that have been put forward by Hywel Dda are for Hywel Dda to consider at this stage, to engage in full public consultation. It's true to say that there may come a point when there will need to be a decision by government, but that point has not yet been reached.
The point is, First Minister, that people need an integrated health system, community services that complement district general hospitals and not replace them. People in the West are still going to need emergency treatment. They will still need operations, they will still need overnight stays, A&E within a reasonable distance of their homes. Now, a Plaid Cymru government will keep these essential services for our rural communities. That means A&E for Bronglais and Glangwili and keeping Withybush open. Now, Plaid Cymru has been warning you for a number of years now about the need to train more doctors. Will you work with Swansea Medical School on its proposals to expand the number of doctors in the Hywel Dda Health Board area? And can you assure people out there and members here today that you will not sign off any decision to remove A&E from Bronglais or Glangwili? And will you also confirm that the Labour government will not sign off any decision to close Withybush or to remove A&E services from that hospital?
Well, it seems to me that it's pointless having any kind of consultation. Now, we have no view on this at this stage, and there are reasons for that. If we take a view at this stage, well, Simon Thomas knows this full well. The reason why we cannot take a view at this stage is because there's an open consultation. You can't shut down the consultation at this stage. There are legal issues surrounding that for a start. It's true to say there will come a point, or there may come a point, when ministers have to take a decision, and that is the point, of course, at which ministers no doubt will be questioned as to why that decision was taken. But you cannot, on the one hand, say we sign up to a parliamentary review looking at creating an NHS that's sustainable, and then say, options are going to be no, and then say there are some options that will always be ruled out completely. That is not the way these things operate. Last week, the parliamentary review was being supported by all parties in this chamber. The question is, are those parties now running away from that review? That is a question I think that needs to be answered.
Leader of the Opposition, Andrew David.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, do you still believe that the Welsh Government's preferred black route option for the M4 will come in nowhere near the £1 billion and will be way below that figure that you prophesied back in 2015?
Well, the figure has certainly risen because there's been more of a delay than expected, but we intend to make sure that the issue of congestion on the M4 is dealt with. I wonder what his party's view is.
First Minister, this is First Minister's questions, and that's why we ask you questions and we look for answers from you. We don't seem to get many answers on a week-by-week basis. But last week in the Business and Enterprise Committee, the senior civil servant who was dealing with this in the Cabinet Secretary's department indicated that the project cost was somewhere near £1.4 to £1.5 billion. The actual figures that have been lodged with the inquiry is 1.3 to 1.4 billion. They're actually lodged with the inquiry, those figures are. Only 2 years ago, you were stating that it was going to be nowhere near £1 billion and be considerably less than that figure. 160 civil servants at that time, as given to us by the Minister, were tied up with this particular project. I ask you again, what has gone wrong? This is the key infrastructure project that the Welsh Government is challenging to deliver. the project costs, if your estimations at that time were to be believed, have nearly doubled by the civil service's own figures that they've put it with the inquiry, and also identified by the Cabinet Secretary in that committee.
Well, first of all, inflation, that makes a difference to the figures. And secondly, the UK government is charging VAT. The UK government is charging VAT. So here's something, a challenge for him. Why doesn't he go back to his party and say, don't charge VAT for this project? That would save us hundreds of millions of pounds.
That is awful, First Minister.
True.
This is your biggest infrastructure project. Yeah. The negotiations around VAT are still ongoing. Without VAT, and these are the words of your own civil servant in that committee, the costs of this project are in the region of £1.3 to £1.4 billion. Only 2 years ago, you were trying to convince people that this project was going to come in at £800 million. I asked you to let us see that information so we could have confidence that you were building a project on sound finances. All this has been undone. Can you commit now today that there is an upper limit where this project is viable? And if there isn't that upper limit, will you be whipping your backbenchers and having Cabinet responsibility to vote this project through, whatever the cost? Whatever the cost.
He didn't know about the VAT, did he? No. That was one of the issues that's blindsided him. And I'm surprised that the leader of the opposition isn't aware of the VAT issue and has not said anything publicly to support the Welsh Government and the Welsh taxpayer. One thing for him to say negotiations are ongoing, but why isn't he standing up and saying to the Conservative Party, a Conservative Party that took funding away from electrification of the railways to spend outside of Wales, a Conservative Party that is trying to increase the price of the M4 project, a Conservative Party that claimed it was reducing the tolls on the Severn Bridge when all it was doing was removing VAT, which wasn't legally able to charge in the first place. I mean, when we talk about spinning, what we have in the leader of the opposition is a whirling dervish. We will deliver transport projects for the people of Wales in the teeth of opposition from the Conservatives.
Arweinydd grŵp yw...
Leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Llywydd. Emergency hospital consultants in Wales have recently written to the First Minister claiming that safety is being compromised to an unacceptable degree. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine has described A&Es like battlefields. Dr Tim Rogerson, a consultant in emergency medicine at the Royal Gwent Hospital, has said about the picture across Wales, we're on our knees as far as emergency care is concerned. We have patients coming into emergency departments that are already full. The consultants have asked the First Minister to review as a matter of urgency the number of beds available for acute care and for a significant increase in funding for social care. Is he going to accede to that request?
First of all, I'm aware of the pressures there have been on emergency staff, and I thank them for what they have done. It has been very difficult given intense spikes in demand, unpredictable spikes in demand at certain days in the course of the holiday period. We would be delighted to spend more on health and social care if the brakes were taken off by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The Cabinet Secretary for Finance only last week outlined that we could be up to £4 billion better off if previous trends had been followed. That is a significant investment we could make in the health service. So, yes, we agree. We agree with the consultants that we want to spend more money on health and social care. Where are we going to take it from? Schools? Because that's the only place we can go. Let's put the council tax up, because that's what will happen if we take money away from local government. We need to make sure the UK government... Boris Johnson today saying there should be £100 million a week available for the NHS in England. That would mean £300 million more available in Wales. On that, if nothing else, I support Boris Johnson.
I'm delighted to hear that, because as a result of leaving the European Union, there will be more money to spend on the health service. In answer to the leader of Plaid Cymru, it's the way you tell him. In answer to the leader of Plaid Cymru earlier on, he said that beds don't really matter. It's how quickly you move people out of them. But the truth of the matter is there's been a very substantial cut in the number of beds available in hospitals throughout Wales in the last 7 years, roughly 20 to 25%, depending on the health board. But the occupancy rate of those beds has barely moved, and it is higher, and has been, as the leader of Plaid Cymru pointed out, above the safe level of 85% now for 7 years. Surely, within the priorities of the health service for which the First Minister is responsible, not Boris Johnson, there should be some kind of change to ensure that hospital safety is actually taken very seriously by this government.
It's a matter for health boards to ensure they have sufficient beds available. It's not right to say I said beds weren't important. I said they were only part of the picture. If you look, for example, at England, where spending on social care has been hammered, England is now reaping what it has sown. We have made sure through, for example, the Integrated Care Fund, that more people can leave hospital when they are ready. We're seeing delayed transfers of care dropping, whereas in England, of course, social care is on the verge of collapse. If you don't believe me, listen to council leaders, Conservative council leaders in England, who are saying just that.
So I wasn't aware that the First Minister had finished. So much noise coming from other parts of the chamber. But the whole point of my question was not about social care, but about beds in hospitals and hospital care. And the consultants who wrote to the First Minister last week said that emergency departments in Wales are in some ways worse than in England. Staff are arriving for work to find patients in the emergency department who were there the previous day, and multiple staff in tears because they feel they cannot deliver the care that patients need. The consultants also claim that the 4-hour target figures for best-performing hospitals in Wales were similar to some of the worst-performing hospitals in England. Surely that is an indictment of 20 years of Labour government in Wales.
Well, there are question marks over England's figures, for a start. That doesn't diminish, of course, the pressures there have been on emergency services in Wales, and I certainly don't seek to belittle that in any way, shape or form. But the question is this. Should you divorce the issue of health and social care, as he is trying to do with his third question? The answer is no, you cannot. The two are integrated. The two are the same. They're integrated in terms of the service they seek to deliver to people. And we have put money into that through the Integrated Care Fund, making sure that people are able to leave hospital when they are able. What England did was to try to spend money on health and starve social care of money, effectively taking money from social care and putting it into health. And now England is reaping the whirlwind of that. We always took the view that health and social care had to be seen in the round, that one was strongly linked to the other. If we look, for example, it's beyond that, the additional learning needs bill, that looks at bringing together education and health provision for young people as well. So we've made sure, when it comes to spending in Wales is higher per head than in England on health and on social care, to make sure that we don't let our people down, just like the government has done in England.
Question 3.
Question 3, Joyce Watson.
Howard, will the First Minister make a statement on the operation of cashless payment systems for school meals?
Well, there are many benefits to schools using cashless systems, helping schools meet the requirement to protect the identity of learners, for example, who receive free school meals, and, of course, preventing the situation arising of children losing their lunch money.
There is, of course, evident link between cashless payment systems and better take-up of free school meals, and that's why I've supported and campaigned for the introduction in every school in Wales. And Powys has done that, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But we now have a situation whereby children whose parents pay for lunch and who haven't topped up their cards will no longer be able to get any food. I understand the Council's position in this, but it can't be right, in my view, that a child will go hungry in school because someone somewhere along the line has forgotten or cannot afford to pay for the dinner money that particular week. And I'm particularly concerned that this is sorted out before the introduction of universal credit that is going to happen in Powys in June. We all know about the delays in people getting their money, and I'm really, really concerned that in this system that could cause an absolute failure by those people expecting that money to be in place and their children to be fed will not happen. So I therefore respectfully ask you, First Minister, if you could have a word with your 2 Cabinet Secretaries to try and sort this out, and there's an urgency that it's done before June.
Yes, we're more than happy to pursue that. I mean, my own son's school introduced cashless payments this term, which I have to say saved on scrambling around for pound coins every week, which was what tended to happen in our house. But the important point is this. I don't think it would be right that if there's no credit in a child's account, as it were, then that child should not have a meal as a result of that. There should be a system in place where parents are reminded in a timely fashion as to what the balance is on that account, and not find out about it when the account has nothing in it. But certainly, I'll ask the Cabinet Secretary for Education to take this up and to reply to my friend and colleague in greater detail.
Russell George.
As I understand it, First Minister, different local authorities across Wales use different payment methods, which does sometimes cause a problem when children move schools. I wonder if you believe that there's rationale in standardising payment methods across Wales.
I think there is rationale in that. First of all, of course, it makes sense for there to be a standard system across an LEA area. Of course, we have local management of schools, but it would seem strange to parents that if a child moved school, that somehow there would then be a problem with not having having a different account with a different balance in it, or not having a cashless system. I think it's fair to say that we should move towards a standardised system in the future.
Question 4, Hefin.
Question 4, Hefin David.
Will the First Minister make a statement on plans for the replacement of the Welsh Government's Children and Young People's Continuing Care Guidance 2012?
Yes, we are setting up a multi-agency task and finish group that will consult upon and produce revised continuing care guidance for children and young people by the spring of next year.
I'm really pleased that the Task and Finish Group has been set up. This is the document, and we, as constituency AMs, and I'm sure regional AMs, get many people concerned about the transition from childhood to adulthood for those children needing continuing health care. This document is responsible for guidance for children. This document, a separate document, is responsible for guidance for adulthood. The children document says eligibility for adult CHC at the age of 17 should be determined by multidisciplinary, multi-agency teams, whereas this document said that the same thing should be approved by local health boards. So there's clear anomalies in the two documents, and they're not the only ones. I think it's really important that not only is this guidance reviewed, but also this guidance in tandem, and that other stakeholders beyond health boards are involved, and including the Children's Commissioner.
Yes, I agree with that. My understanding is that adult CHC services, the transition to those services has to commence when an individual is aged 14. LHBs have the responsibility to draw up a robust local transition policy with partner agencies. That includes local authorities. There will be some issues that will be outside of the scope of the local health board, for example, responsibility for meeting any ongoing educational needs. But the member is right to say that as we look to revise the guidance for young people, it's massively important that as that guidance is revised, that there is then a seamless transition to adulthood, so that that kind of problem where people can't access services in the same way, or there's a barrier they can't get over, so those barriers are eliminated.
Question 5, Russell George.
5, Russell George.
First Minister, make a statement on the services provided to the people of Powys by Shropdock.
Yes, Powys Teaching Health Board currently commissioned Shropdock to provide GP out-of-hours services to the people of Powys.
Thank you, First Minister. You'll be aware, of course, that Powys doesn't have a district general hospital, which makes it all the more important to my constituents that there is an excellent out-of-hours GP service. The current out-of-hours service is run by Shropdock, and the Health Board has said that they want to end that service and contract with Shropdock and replace it with the 111 out-of-hours service by this spring. Now, I have no doubt in my own mind that neither the Health Board or any other organisation can currently provide the same level of support as Shropdock provides. Shropdock also provides services to GP practices, and I think there's a real significant risk here that if some GP practices could fold if those services are no longer available. And it seems that the Health Board hasn't properly consulted on these proposals or consulted GPs correctly. So can I ask, has the Welsh Government exerted any influence over the Health Board in changing to a 111 model? And can you give any assurance to my constituents that any change would not be detrimental to them? And if you can't give that assurance, would you examine this situation in Powys?
Well, the situation has arisen because Shropdock itself has faced financial challenges during 2017. Those challenges do remain. As a result, the Health Board have been working with Shropdock and the English CCGs to support them while they address those challenges. I understand the Health Board did establish a task force to assess and deliver potential alternative solutions for the provision of out-of-hours services in Powys, and that task force has developed short and medium-term plans. The current contract with Shropdock does end, I understand, in the spring, so there is an opportunity there now to work on new models and to work with Shropdock itself. This is a situation that's not been chosen by the Health Board, but there have been challenges that have been placed before them as a result of Shropdock's own financial situation, which we hope can be resolved.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd.
Thank you, Llywydd. Well, as just been mentioned, many of the residents of Powys are reliant on services that are either provided from England or are located in England, and given the news that I'm hearing that there is a delay in terms of a decision on the location of a general hospital for the west of Shropshire, wherever that is to be located, and it's an argument between Telford and Shrewsbury itself, and that's ongoing, and the Westminster government doesn't have any money to invest in that, it would seem. So what discussions are you having as government, because it's beyond the Health Board, what discussions are you as a government having with the government in England to ensure that those services continue to be available and that there is no gap in the services provided in Powys?
Well, the Health Board have been in discussion with Shropshire and also Telford and Wrekin in order to work with them to develop new services, if that's the path they choose to take, and to see in which way they can support Shropdock to be sustainable in the long term. So discussions have taken place between the Health Board and also the organisations in England.
First Minister, Shropdock has provided out-of-hours GP services to Powys for 22 years, but like every part of the NHS, they've also felt financial pressures. The decision not to renew the contract is extremely disappointing, as Shropdock have provided one of the best out-of-hours services in the country and provided a first-class service to the people of Powys. First Minister, can you assure this chamber that the decision to end the Shropdock contract was not financially motivated? And can you assure the people of Powys that the replacement service will be as good, if not better, than the out-of-hours service provided by Shropdock?
That's what we want to do. But Shropdock, remember, has financial problems of its own, and that's that's the reason why this situation has arisen. One of the concerns as well is that the two English CCGs who currently commission Shropdock were retendered during 2018, and of course it's important that both sides of the board work together in order to commission a new service. But this is not a situation where the Health Board have chosen to be in a position where they want to offload Shropdock, if I can put it that way. It's because of Shropdock's financial challenges that the situation has arisen. But everybody wants to get to a situation where the service is at least as good as the service that currently exists.
Question 6, Lee Walter.
Will the First Minister establish a unit to explore how Wales can harness artificial intelligence and automation?
Well, automation, innovation and digitalisation form one of the cornerstones of the Economic Action Plan, and we're focusing our investment to support businesses to prepare for the challenges of tomorrow and future-proofing our economy and workforce.
Thank you, First Minister. And I welcome the fact the new Economic Action Plan includes as one of the criteria for supporting new businesses adapting to automation. But the implications of automation go way beyond that. It's estimated that some 700,000 jobs are at risk, and they hit upon every single portfolio. So would you now look at how you can coordinate efforts by establishing a unit to explore opportunities so we can support the people that are going to be impacted by automation and also explore the opportunities for Wales?
Yes, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Does there come a point where automation is so comprehensive that there aren't enough people with money in their pockets to buy what the robots make? You know, when does that point come? Nobody knows. We've not been in this situation before. But he asks an important question. How do we look to cope and deal and look to prosper from the changes that will come in the future? Well, we are already examining the impact of technology and data on public service delivery. For example, the Digital and Data Group provides a forum for sharing best practice on that. It's part of the Economic Action Plan, and we do engage regularly with businesses and stakeholders to discuss the potential impact and opportunities of digital technologies. And if we look at innovative tech, well, of course, we're already considering the opportunities of artificial intelligence. M7 Managed Services, in partnership with IBM, opened an Artificial Intelligence Centre of Competence last December. And, of course, the Centre of Excellence in Mobile and Emerging Technologies at the University of South Wales is working with businesses to see how businesses can benefit from the challenges of the future, meet those challenges, and, of course, continue to provide jobs for people.
Nick Ramsey.
Diolch. First Minister, I think Lee Waters has made a very good point, and I agree with most of your answer there. Yesterday, I attended the Severn Growth Summit at the Celtic Manor. The summit looked at ways of developing the economy of South East Wales, particularly now in the light of the first reduction and then the decision to abolish the Severn Bridge tolls later in the year. First Minister, there's a tremendous mood of optimism surrounding some of these imminent changes, and there's also a real desire to use it as a stimulus to develop a high-tech economy in South East Wales from the border along to Cardiff and hopefully further. In terms of the unit that Lee Waters mentioned, would you look at potentially citing that within that area so that when these changes happen to the road network and changes to the Severn Bridge, for instance, that there is a real... this is used as an impetus to make sure that the economy is developed in the future in a way that is developing the high-tech sector and the areas that Lee Waters mentioned?
Well, I've already mentioned two examples there of centres that have been put in place in order to deal and meet the challenges of the future. And of course, much of this will be driven by the higher education sector. So many of the sectors, of course, many of these centres in the future will be run by them. But there's no doubt at all that we want to encourage cross-border economic working. It happens everywhere else in the world, so why wouldn't it happen between Wales and England? If that leads to joint prosperity between South East of Wales and the South West of England, then so be it. One of the problems, of course, is the South West of England doesn't have a body that we can talk to in the same way as we can talk to Scotland or Northern Ireland. Certainly that's an issue that will need to be resolved in the future.
Gareth Bennett.
Diolch, Llywydd. Yes, it's good that this issue is being addressed at a governmental level. However, there is recent evidence that companies like Tesco are now losing a lot more money from shoplifting since bringing in automation in the form of self-scanning machines. Is there now a case for the Welsh Government to work with those companies in trying to move away from unnecessary automation and go back towards hiring real people to do jobs?
Well, I mean, in reality, shoplifting increased when self-service was introduced probably about 70 years ago into supermarkets. They accept it as part of, I mean, they obviously look to catch shoplifters, but they accept it as part of their business models. I think a variety of options should be available for people. For some people, they want to physically go through a checkout. For others, they want to check out automatically at the end. For others, they want to go around with a scanner. And having those choices is important for people, especially at busy times when the automated services take a lot of pressure off the services that the people are using when they physically go through a checkout.
Question 7, Gina.
First Minister make a statement on the impact of the rollout of universal credit in Wales.
Well, I'm extremely concerned about the severe issues with universal credit, such as the impact of the changes to payment of housing support and the impact they are having on rent arrears, and we have expressed our concerns to the UK Government, calling for a halt to the rollout of universal credit.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. Disabled people and single parents and women have been amongst the biggest losers under 7 years of austerity, according to the Equality and Human Rights Commission, standing to lose around 10% of their income by 2022 due to tax and benefit changes since 2010. And the rollout of the flawed universal credit, with its unacceptable payment delays, as you've said, has pushed many people into debt, rent arrears and eviction. Of course, member for Torfaen, Lynn Legal has fed back on the Torfaen experience. Also, young people aged 18 to 21 have also lost out under universal credit, with housing benefit withdrawn. And I don't know if members are aware the Children's Society has highlighted the UK Government's proposals to introduce an earnings threshold for eligibility to free school meals under universal credit, restricting free school meals to families with net earnings under £7,400 per year. And with universal credit expected to be fully rolled out this year in the Vale of Glamorgan and other parts of Wales, what support is the Welsh Government giving to our advice services, such as Cardiff and Vale Citizens Advice, who will be bearing the brunt of supporting people adversely affected by universal credit?
Well, we have provided £5.97 million of grant funding for this year. That funding will continue in the next financial year. It's for 3 projects: frontline advice services, Better Advice, Better Lives and Communities First Shared Outcomes projects, and they ensure access to free and independent social welfare advice across Wales. As I said, that will continue into the next financial year.
Mohammed Ashkar.
Heading Officer, in his budget last November, the Chancellor of Exchequer announced changes to the universal credit system. These include the removal of the 7 waiting days before a claimant can apply for universal credit. It is a significant improvement to the advance payment system, including increasing the amount available and changes to support people with their rent payments when moving from housing benefit. Does the First Minister agree with the Chief Executive of Citizen Advisory Bureau, who said these changes are a very welcome step and will make a significant differences to people claiming universal credit in Wales?
Well, it shouldn't have been messed up in the first place, should it? I mean, that's an admission that what was put in place at the very beginning wasn't thought through properly and ended up with a lot of people in debt. We still have evidence that housing associations, from housing associations and citizens' advice, show that rent arrears are still a problem for people on universal credit. There are other issues as well that surround the implementation of universal credit, such as a lack of awareness concerning alternative payment arrangements and access to advance payments. Those problems still remain.
Bethan Jenkins.
First Minister, the Scottish Government, as part of the Smith Commission, will see yet again more powers over welfare being devolved to their government. In the past, your government has said that you don't want to have powers over welfare because of the cost implications. But as we've rehearsed time and time again in debates here in the National Assembly for Wales, we have been led to understand that the fiscal framework for those powers will be transferred to the Scottish Government, and therefore the cost of administrating those welfare benefits will be transferred alongside the powers. Will you therefore change your mind on this? We can stand here and moan about how welfare will affect our citizens, and I agree with you on that, but can we take responsibility here in Wales for those welfare powers if we are better at doing it than Westminster?
Well, the answer to the question lies in the election of a Labour government in Westminster. It's committed to fairness, to social justice and to opportunity. We must be very careful. We must be very careful in divorcing ourselves from the welfare system that exists across GB. Why? Because we're net beneficiaries. At the end of the day, if we end up in a situation where we have to finance our own welfare system, we will be worse off in terms of the money that's available. So we have to be careful not to move along that line, move along that path and be in a position where we end up taking on powers that we then don't have the money to finance. That's the issue for us. And we know that the UK government has a record of agreeing to the transfer of powers without the transfer of the finances. And that's the question we need to answer.
Question 8, Jenny Rathbone.
What assessment has the Welsh Government made of the sustainability of current bus services in Wales?
Well, we are working with the industry and others to develop long-term sustainability by developing integrated networks such as the Metro in North and South Wales. And we will look, when the powers are devolved, at a better and more sustainable structure for bus services in Wales.
Oh, my constituents are looking forward to the trams and the light rail systems that the Metro will bring. But in the meantime, people rely on buses to get themselves to work and to school. Cardiff Bus is the municipal bus service, and they are being subjected to aggressive assaults by private companies who are simply cherry-picking the routes that are most profitable. Now, the 1986 Transport Act does not allow the cross-subsidy of one route from another, revenue from another. And I just wondered what the government's plans are for ensuring the sustainability of a network of sustainable services for all our citizens, particularly those who don't have a car, and you know, what model of delivery we need and what legislation we might need.
We cannot continue with a system where, unless services are subsidised, they can be altered or removed almost at the drop of a hat. I remember not so long ago in Ceredigion, where Arriva pulled out of the provision of bus services there at very short notice, and then it was left to other private operators to step in and fill the gap. That is not a sustainable way of running bus services. Nor is it right that in many parts of Wales there is only one provider, and that provider is a private provider that can charge effectively what it wants. I mean, this is another one of the myths that was peddled by the Tories in the 80s and beyond, that in transport there can be competition. Well, for many people in Wales, there is no competition when it comes to buses. There's certainly no competition when it comes to trains. People are paying over the odds for private monopolies. That situation cannot continue, and the Cabinet Secretary and I and the Government will be looking at ways of ensuring that in the future we have a bus network that is publicly supported both financially and by the people of Wales, and not one that is fragmented and overpriced.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Llywydd. First Minister, I've received comments from a local bus operator in Pembrokeshire who has expanded his business following the closure of another bus company in the county, but unfortunately is having difficulty in upgrading his infrastructure. Now, I accept that the budgets of local authorities are tight, but given the important service that more and more bus companies are providing across Wales and the fact that they provide jobs locally too, what assistance can the Welsh Government offer bus companies such as this one to safeguard their viability for the future and therefore secure the sustainability of bus services, particularly in rural areas?
Well, how many companies have we seen over the years go to the wall? We've seen many, and we must reconsider the structure of bus services. And that means, of course, for example, is it possible to have a system of franchises? It won't work on a local government level. I think that'd be too small. But we must ensure that the companies have to deliver the service at the price that was agreed, and that's sustainable for years. We've got to move away from the system we have at present, where for the majority of the people of Wales, one company runs the services and they decide on which ones will work without any kind of permissions from local people. That has to change. We must consider that there's no competition in most parts of Wales. We'll have to move to that kind of system, which is much more sustainable and will ensure that we don't see services just falling apart very often, as we have seen over the past years.
Minister think that it's acceptable that there are no rush hour buses from Wrexham Industrial Estate, one of the largest industrial estates in Europe, into Wrexham Town Centre. Thousands of workers being left high and dry by a non-existent transport service. You either have to clock off early or you have to hang around for an hour to catch the bus home. Now, you can talk as much as you like about your occasional bus summits. You can show us fancy maps about a so-called North Wales metro transport system. Or, of course, you can tell us that you're serious about this. Is this acceptable? Because people are telling me it's not. I'm sure everybody here would believe it's not. Why is Wrexham suffering from substandard services in this respect? And why doesn't the largest industrial estate, or one of the largest industrial estates in Europe, not have what is a basic service?
Well, why is he taking it up with the council? Is the council responsible for subsidising bus services? And he is right. Do I think it's acceptable? Do I think it's acceptable? No, I don't. I think he's right. But the reality is, as he knows full well, we don't have control over the buses yet. Now, there's no point pretending, not even the Leader of the Opposition knows that, apparently, based on the comment he's just given, that we don't have responsibility over the buses yet. I want to see, for the people of Wrexham and those who are commuting to Wrexham Industrial Estate, a proper, integrated, sustainable transport service via the North East Wales Metro, using trains, using buses, to ensure that the situation he's described, which is not acceptable, does not continue in the future as it has done after 30 years of Tory transport misrule.
Diolch i'r Prif.
Thank you, First Minister. The next